Well, here we are.
Good morning.
Morning, Bruce. How you doing there? I know you're in California, so you're a couple hours behind me.
Yes, sir. 10:03 here on the West Coast.
I'm in the Midwest, as we talked about before. I'm going to kill this music, but I'm in the Midwest, and we're over 70 degrees, so that's fine. We finally,
nice.
We finally tipped the, we've turned the tide, I guess.
So have we, man. We had a really drawn out kind of winter, all good, but a little longer than normal. Like still getting cold in April and even in May, where you go, what's going on? So, now we're back. I think yesterday was a good warm 85. Hey, Gil, I see you there. How you doing, brother?
Gil, nice to see you. Yep. Yeah, you guys are doing pretty well, but I fear for you guys. It looks like it's going to get hot out there.
We'll see. You never know. It would be more for my son. He's got his soccer games. Ellie was in softball, my daughter. Right?
Gotcha.
Soccer games, Saturdays. Now they just did their fourth game yesterday, so they have 4 more. And they get next week off, and then they start at 9:30 in the morning, which I think is a better starting time. So
awesome.
So you get a little bit, hopefully, if it's a hot one, that it's not starting out, like blazing in the morning.
Well, I'm going to step out of the way here in a second, but I just want to remind everybody that who's here. We've got some bodies in here, which is great, and don't be afraid to ask any questions as we go. And as soon as we have an opening or window, I'll note those and get those to Bruce, of course. But with that, I'm going to step back, and Bruce, you can let everybody know what we're doing today and about your book, which is really exciting. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
So I'll let you guys go. If anybody needs me, well, I'll be in the back here.
I'll call upon you. Hey, by the way, did you get your copy?
I have not gotten it yet. So
it should be there, man.
So I'm hoping no one stole it. I'll check the mail today. Maybe got here. I'm looking forward to it. So excited for that. So everybody, let's have a good stream. Looking forward to it.
Here we go. Yes, sir. My new book called The Ultimate Guide to Syncopation, which is basically just a setup for many different concepts of the classic Ted Reed syncopation. So, for years and years and years, I've used that book. And some of the concepts, of course, have been laid out in the past by other notables, an Alan Dawson, a Freddie Gruber. And for me, it became a matter of, being efficient with the book so that I didn't have to have students go out and get like 14 books, which I used to do. And then started to trim down a little bit, whereby I still use some books, but this one became like just such a great classic to interpret for roles, for movement, for timekeeping, all sorts of cool things. So, one of the very first sections in the book that I do, hello from San Antonio. Hi, Mark Gonzalez. How are you? From this starting point, what I did was I put together just a selection of just working those first sections as roles. So for me, I was always looking at different books and trying to, get some movement in place. And sometimes I'd look at a book and it just didn't have enough to fortify what I was after with my students. So in regards to using syncopation, what I did is I just started to take the outline of that and just say, all right, these triplets are now 16th note triplets. They're doubles. They're a very specific move to work through, a choreographed move. And as I went through the book, I was also looking to really maintain a slow clarity with the rolls, not worried about any speed. Because in my world, what I'm trying to produce with everybody is get a really nice relationship of the bond of the movement of the stick and the fingers just naturally moving with the stick. So if you were to just look at what I would qualify as the 3 delivery systems, essentially, so let's just look at it from that standpoint. You got an downstroke. Okay, that would be driven from what I would call more of a molar delivery. That can be done in French grip as well. But for fine-tuning the rolls, German palm down position, or maybe just slightly rolled out in an American position is going to be more realistic for speed and for more articulation on the inside of the hand. For the French grip, if you start to go faster, you're going to close down your fingers. It's not really going to be super clear for tone, and it's also going to be a chocolate mess. And why fight gravity? Just come with a palm down, and you'll get those guys to work much easier for you and get a more deliberate draw of a push and a pull, or an open and close, a bounce and a catch, however you want to frame it. So the downstroke double, bingo, there you go. And I would call that a pivot to a catch. So the stick is bouncing and then coming back into my hand. On the upstroke double, same thing, although I give a little open so that I can get my fingers to respond to an opening and then draw them in and close. And then I've got two frames of what I would essentially call a tap stroke double, a wristed double. So I could either let it drop and stay in this position until it is ready to move. It could be the next move be the upstroke. That's probably why I would drop like that. That would be more characteristic of that, a type of double. And then I could also do a bounce and a turn and get that stick to come back into my hand as I'm making my turn to set up my next move. So that would be a real efficient way to work those out. And so, you know, the triplets, they're going to be defined with less of that wristed motion where I came back. It's going to be more of the tap stroke double. So if I just look at, just going to look at the very first page that I start the rolls on, which is page 2, section 1. There's actually a video for it. So maybe I'll just play the video and not talk. No, just kidding. I did videos. I was really more about on my videos, I'm not just doing a playback of it and do a demo, but I do the demo, but I'm also talking it through. I wanted to give some clarification to what's going on so that everybody had a clearer understanding. You know, I could do the movement, and if I don't speak and point out maybe certain attributes I'm after, you might miss it, you know, in the greater detail. I mean, for me, I'm so focused on those details that for me, it's very clear. But, you know, going through teaching now for 42 years, not everybody sees that at first, but that's my job, is to bring forward this clarification of identifying the movement, being super, super inside your body experience to know when you're moving in harmony with what we're after in terms of producing nice fluid rolls. So I'm going to take the first one, which is an example from page 14 in Syncopation number 1. And what I would do is I would play this down, up. Whoops, I clicked my sticks here. Try that again. Down, up, double, down. Okay, so all my drops are going to be molar driven with a nice drop. Yeah, I could get in there and do wrist stuff, but I have a whole series of other exercises that would be more functional for that. These kind of rolls, if I was doing rolls in a book like Wilcoxon, or one of my favorites, I've spoken about it many times, the Contemporary Percussionist by Charles Memphis, then there's a way to route yourself through the material with really good, solid choreographed moves. And those are the essence of how you can get a fluid performance of that. That's really, you know, the utmost in terms of, you know, getting through the material. Because if you're stammering and stuttering and really getting against you or working against yourself, it's not going to be fun. And at the end of the day, what, you know, I always come through as my statement is that while it's great to do calisthenics, those are fantastic to loosen up and get, you know, some identifiable loop going so you can practice. You know, you want to put those things to work. So whether it's, you know, cleverly working them around the drum set or doing some literature where you get a chance to really be pressed upon to maneuver yourself through the literature that you're going through. And I find the Wilcoxon book, The All-American Drummer, or the other one, the Swung Rudimental Etudes. I can't think of the title right now. It's eluding me. But that being said, that Wilcoxon book, great. Also the Memphis book, fantastic. No stickings in the Memphis book. So you really have to understand like how you can put in those moves and get the efficiency of the literature to come to life. So, but back to the top here. So if I'm looking at this first one that I do, I have this down, up, double, down. Okay. So what does that mean? I've got a downstroke double. I've got an upstroke double, and I'm really at this slower tempo. I'm lifting up on the second stroke. So I have an to an up. I say up because I want to break up the word up so that I can really monitor both strokes. If I'm playing faster, that double upstroke would be moving up from the first to the second. However, I don't want to exceed a certain height of my forearm, which would induce a larger angle to the stick tip, and that'll pull me off the pad or the drum, and that'll produce a crappy tone. I want to stay rooted to the sweet spot of the stick tip. So I want to be super mindful of my upstrokes and how those work. Okay, just going backwards a little bit to facilitating your forearm and your wrists and your fingers to be responsive to that. That's a whole other conversation that I don't really want to get into right now. I'll just talk about more of these bullet points. But you can really get inside that movement and inject a nice fluidity, a release in the forearm at the elbow, a release in the wrist, but not over releasing it, because if you go too far beyond that, you can corrupt the stability of the stick. So as you go through this first one, let me just play a series of quarter notes. I'm just going to lift up, and those lifts would be, relegated to the value of and inside the notation. There's no ands there, but that breath and that fluidity of upstroke would be best served when you come up on the and value of the inside that quarter note. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, up, double down, up, down, up, down. When you put an emphasis on the upstrokes, even though it's not a note, and you're getting a breath and a stretch, and you're really cognizant of that element, now you're tying the whole fabric together. It's not just about impact. It's about the delivery to the surface. Super important. I can't stress that enough. And that's, something that I've worked on for years with my students. I've worked on for years for myself to be, matter of fact about it. So it just comes out and it's super easy. And when you get into that state of execution like that, and it's just working, then you're not thinking. You're more about up here or here, your imagination or your passion, your feel of what you want to do, knowing that you can trust the execution of your limbs to provide the movement and the flow that you need to get through whatever it is you're doing musically. So I'll go to another one. If I go to page 3, just carrying on with that same theme, what I did is I just took small examples just to give everybody a layout and a guide, as in the title. And then, you can go through and pick out other exercises on that same page or in that same section. So if I go to my book, page 3, I have an example from page 14 of number 6, for example. So if I played 6, it would be down, up, double, down, up, double, down, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. So I got a little ahead of myself there. Let's try that again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. That's not speed. That's actually good control to be able to sit inside your hand and get the mechanics of the doubles to really be super, let's say, nice and round, but the sensitivity of the fingers to move with a good quality inside the hand, and that they don't separate, and that even when you do go faster, that they're still there. Also, another thing is, when you're coming down, of course, the natural propensity would be to maybe strike a little harder and get to a point where you're clobbering the pad. You're coming down too hard. We want to get a nice element of touch on the downstroke. Can you go through your book without having gone through the Ted Reed book? Absolutely. Absolutely, Gil. No need to have gone through Ted Reed. In fact, this section, I've never seen anybody do rolls. Maybe there's somebody out there that's done those with rolls. I have not seen that. And I'm sure that if they did go through it, it wouldn't be, anywhere near the way I would have arranged it with all the choreographed moves. So, but yeah, and especially the first sections, I spent a little more time really dealing with those rolls, because I just tell you, it's so valuable to get that delivery, to get the fluidity, get the hand on the inside to work effectively. And then it's a setup to go through more challenging material. The cool thing about drumming is that it never stops. There's always something to confront yourself with and to push forward on. Literature you can find that you haven't gone through. I mean, I have a reasonable amount of books, nowhere near as others, but more than some. But I have a couple of students that have just amassed a huge library of books, and which is great. At the end of the day, you can fill your head with only so much material before you start to pop, and you have to look at it like, what's the lane in the highway that you're trying to pursue? While you can go through a bunch of different, let's say, method books for literature, snare drums material, like maybe something from Mitchell Peters or Charles Wilcoxon or Emil Scholl or the De La Cluse book, or name a book. I'm thinking, Portraits in Rhythm. All those books have a validity. Podemsky, they're all great. And actually, they are good to go through those books from the standpoint of different fonts can create a little bit of that, that looks different. How do I maneuver through that? At the end of the day, the math is the math. So when you serve up the math, now you're cooking. And another thing about this that I would say is that, defining these roles with pinpoint precision of rhythm. Now, I only did, basic rolls of like triplet rolls and 16th note bass rolls. So those would be 16th triplets or 32nd notes. You can interpret a roll in a whole bunch of different ways. So if you want to get more detailed insights to rolls that would be like 14 strokes, so over a septuplet, or 10 over a quintuplet, go to the end of stick control, and then you'll see a whole variety of those. Gary Chafee addresses it a little bit in his book for the pyramid of rhythms, going through that whole escapades of, from an 8th note roll all the way to a 32nd note roll. So you go from, 2s to 3s to 4s to 5s to 6s, 7s, 8s. Please show technique accents in press rolls. Well, for a press roll, what I would work on is first delivering that stick to the pad and get a reverberant bounce by taking off the ring and pinky finger. So if I was going to do a press roll, if I have these two fingers attached, it's clumsier. If I remove them, then I can get a little bit more of a refinement of that buzz. And if I was doing accents, it would just be the same. It would be... if you can roll and get a good buzz roll on a pad, then you got it made, because the snare drum's far more forgiving. So, and I do a whole setup of getting, in this case, I would try to get 5 notes, 1 E and a 2 real fast. And then, of course, bleed in from right hand to left hand. So there's a little setup of that. But that's, the same thing that you would do with accents in single strokes, you would get accents in buzz rolls. The same down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap affair would be applied in that regards to the setup of that. But I did not do press rolls in my book. And again, because I've got another lane that I work with from that standpoint. But in this regards, doubles are part of a great vast majority of what we do in terms of the family of diddles. Paradiddles, paradiddle diddles, paradiddle diddle diddles, double paradiddles, triple paradiddles, all those doubles, or any kind of a doubly, singly combination, which Gary Chafee refers to as a compound sticking, combinations of singles and doubles. That's the essence of what I'm after on drum set performance, and get clarity out of the double. So when you're moving around, that you've got more mobility when you play doubles. You can get a little bit more melodically creative, because you can, move it around to those combinations using 5-note combinations or 7-note combinations. Still, played over triplets and 16ths. I'm not Mr. Odd Time. However, I did write an odd time book. Where's my odd time? Back here, Puzzles, Rhymes, and Riddles. That book was my, foray into using odd time phrasing, odd time grooves, some melodic approaches to that. It's actually a great book. I have not, unfortunately, pushed it in terms of, with my students I do, but pushed it out there in the world of the drum, let's say, Drum Planet out there on social media, as much as I should have or could have. But it's a great book. The third section is absolutely the bomb, as I would say. It really has a lot of nuts and bolts in there that you can really get clever with your rhythmic applications and stuff that you can use, depending. I mean, if you're doing a pop gig, you can sneak a little bit of that in there. But if you're looking to increase headroom and have a little bit more range in your understanding of accent structures, that book happened. So anyway, back to the top. I'm going to go now just to my book, page 5, where I address the same idea with the triplet roll, but I add eighth notes. Now, when I add eighth notes, my rule of thumb here for these exercises, again, just for these, if I did things in a method book or an etude book, depending upon the tempo, things change. There's always gear structures. So, and I'm trying to induce a drop into the time so that there's a fabric of stretch and drop into the time, which will reinforce your inner body experience of time, which is so important. I know we have, click tracks and metronomes to work with. Absolutely got to get in there. But your body time also is a matter of work that needs to be accomplished so that you can get in there, utilize it, on a cover gig. I mean, maybe there's guys out there using a metronome or a click in their ear. I would find that distracting because you can't really play with your mates on stage. You want to get in there and have some interaction. And if you're struggling with your time, that's another thing, man. You got to work on that as well. But I know that in bigger pop gigs, that is protocol. So I get it. So you want to have both. But the inner experience of movement is so important to bring about a better fabric of stretch of time and how it can work. And, in the reality of it, it doesn't need to be this like perfect thing. It needs to breathe. You can hear examples of great drummers where things move a little bit. John Bonham, Alvin Jones, Jack DeJohnette, Tony Williams. It doesn't take away from the impact of what they're doing musically and their sense of intensity of what they're throwing down. Their sense of presence is there. It's just, people are people. We breathe and we move a little bit. No harm, no foul there. So on page 5 in my book, I introduced the eighth notes because I'm attributing these interpretations to page 16 and 17 in the Syncopation book, whereby he's playing triplets mixed with eighth notes. So if I, again, interpret my triplets as a roll and I have my eighth notes, let's look at number 1. I would have down, up, double, down, tap, down, tap, down, tap. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So I'm still doing this, but in between I'm playing what I would just call a tap stroke. So I have 2 different delivery systems. I have this nice lifted molar, and my strokes with my left hand, they're not tippy-tappy and way down to the pad and small and short. I'm opening up so I can feel a value of a wristed stroke. When I speak out, I'll just play a series of eighth notes as I did for my first example at the top of page 5 in my book. It says eighth note example, and I'm playing down, tap, down, tap, down, tap, down, tap. Inside there's only 50% of what I'm speaking out. The other 50% is the movement. So while I'm saying down, tap, there's another thing going on. I'm playing an upstroke to reboot my downstroke, and I'm playing a turn to reboot my tap. So I could say easily up, turn, up, turn, up, turn, up. Don't turn up your volume. Just turning with the left and up with the right. Feel that nice camaraderie between those 2 strokes. In many things that we do as we are developing our skill set, different hands can use different approaches. So in other words, I could be playing, a French grip molar here and playing more of a German-based stroke with my left hand. So playing just a groove, EN4, O, EN2, EN4. I want the independence of movement to really be developed, and the independence of position as well, because the drum set is not one surface. It's a multi-surfaced affair there. So, coming out to the French grip position on the floor tom or the ride cymbal can be very effective. And there's nuance, dialectical nuance that you can come into to really heighten your experience of what you're doing as a player, and maybe get that dialect like the guys you're imitating or emulating or that you've been inspired by, trying to get that more nuanced affair of what they're coming up with. like an Al Jackson Jr., like a Levon Helm, like a James Gatson or a Roger Hawkins, or all those great session players, you know, that they didn't have like ridiculous chops. They had a feel. They had an elasticity to their approach where they could, you know, definitely get inside the music and bring it to life, like, you know, ridiculous. I mean, think of Roger Hawkins, all the records he played on. If you don't know him, he was the major session drummer for Muscle Shoals. So, you know, he was working with the Staple Singers, Aretha Franklin, Glenn Fry, even, you know, guys like all over the map in terms of different styles. I think their first hit was the Percy Sledge hit, When a Man Loves a Woman. That group of guys kind of made their mark and then became major guys, major enough for Leonard Skinner to bring them up, right? The Muscle Shoals guys. So when I'm playing the roll, I've got my down, up, double, down, tap, down, tap, down, tap, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2. So I'm very aware of a few different things when I'm playing that. One thing that I'm aware of is the movement, and the second thing is the note value. So I have a specific way of counting my 16th note triplets that was passed on to me from Louis Bellson via Henry Bellson, which was for 16th notes, 1 and and the and is the 8th note. You know, when you are subdividing an 8th note into 3 16th note triplets, the and is part of that affair. When you play 8th note triplets, there's no and of 8th notes, but there's an and, or how I count triplets, 1 and Lee, or 1 and 2 and but that's not the same as our 1 and 2 and when we're playing a duple 2 meter or 2 beats. So those affairs with counting and understanding the movement, super important. There's also a value of your feet that you can throw on the underside. I often say you can do a couple things. You could walk your feet in 8th notes, like just lift your heel, drop your heel. In other words, stay up on the ball of your foot and drop. Stay up on the ball of your foot and drop. And then from left to right, or right to left, depending upon if you're a left-footed or right-footed guy or gal, you can just sit and feel that body time as you're playing these. So if I play, I'll just do number 5. I have that on the bottom. That is a roll on beat 1 and beat 2, and then 3 and 4 and are just regular 8th notes. And I would have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and down, up, double, down, up, double, down, tap, down, tap, down. So again, slow, methodical, good stretch. Feel the density of the stick inside the hand. Just because you're playing slow, 2 things. You don't have to get stuck inside the hand and hammer and wrist it out. You can still let go. But letting go can still induce a certain amount of density to each stroke so that you don't have to have things feeling like they're kind of squirrely inside the hand. The relationship of how the fingers and moving with the stick can create a support system. So these are like highly tuned shock absorbers. They really stretch and contract to give with the stick, not in a reckless way, a very performative way, in that when you go through the process, matter of fact, you know, whether I'm playing 9 strokes faster, those doubles, let's just come over to this pad so you can see on the inside here a little better. So that's a push-pull. Am I doing it like I would practice a push-pull in the developmental stage? You know, somewhat, but not like that. That's a little bit more of a calisthenic. I would use that too. I could do that in that same 16th note groove I was doing before and use the push-pull in other words, in contrast to maybe just doing a molar thing, depending upon what you want to do. Okay, I'm getting a little bit off topic because my book doesn't really deal with those dilemmas or elements that you want to develop. But let me just push forward. If I go to my 16th note rolls, they become 32nd notes rolls. And so I've got one exercise where I'm just demonstrating the downstroke and the upstroke double with a pivot catch and a drop pull and a pivot catch and a drop pull, a pivot catch and a drop pull and a pivot catch and a drop pull, and making that upstroke super efficient and trying to stay out of the identity of coming way back here to get my upstroke and sit lower to the pad. Now, there will be maybe a subtle anticipation to get that first stroke of the double, but it's minimal. And so then you can put down what I followed it up with is just playing 16th notes and playing the pivot catch, drop pull, pivot catch, drop pull. And in between, I'm playing my wristed doubles. Now, those wristed doubles are the ones I was talking about before that would be brought back into the hand as you're making a turn from the wrist. Things you want to watch for is that you don't start doing it from the arms. You can do that. I'm not saying that those kind of nuanced movements are off the table, but when you're developing something, you want to watch the utmost in the direct motion or isolating the move that you're after to develop. Otherwise, you're clogging up the drain. So if I do it to 30-second notes, okay, the same thing applies. But now when I say down, tap, up, tap, down, which is probably what I'd say because I couldn't say pivot, catch, double, drop, pull, double super fast. Now each directive is a double. So I'd have down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap, down. But initially, I'd go back to that pivot, catch, double, drop, pull, double, pivot, catch, double, drop, pull, double, because now every movement is being spoken out. And you might say, well, why do I want to do that? I can tell you, guy after guy after guy. When you get that clarity of the movement and you are synchronized with that kind of movement, that will make huge changes in how you feel and how you move with your doubles. Matter of fact, been doing it for 42 years, so can speak very confidently about that and the results that you get. And you might think, wow, that's slow, and I already know how to do doubles. Yeah, you can retrain your doubles to be even fatter and more productive. So going on, like my exercise that I would shoot for on this using the 16th notes mixed with 8th notes would be page 23. There's a 20-bar exercise at the end of that. And of course, when you start right-handed, everything's right-handed, except when you go down, and let me just look at my TED read just to accurately speak that out. But when you go to page 23 and you're looking at the 20-bar exercise, on the fourth line, it ends on a quarter note on beat 4. Now, you could technically go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then reboot left-handed. But I say stay with the right-hand lead. Finish up that last line, and then the last bar, very last bar would be 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and then go back to the top and do your left-hand lead. So that tempo that I'm playing is just a little faster than I would prefer. I'd probably play it about here. Let me play a run through. I go 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and down, tap, and down, tap, up, tap, 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 down. That's the first line. Just again. Now, would I play those kind of moves when I'm playing fast? It depends on the context of what's going on. For example, in the Charles Memphis book, there's several, but there's one specific pass that the guy has written out a rule based over half note triplets. And so if I'm playing that and I use my roll structure as triplets, so in other words, I'm playing 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1, my rolls would be 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I'm sorry, I'm not doing that right. Hang on. I'm thinking 16th note triplets to 32nd note triplets. So sorry, it would be 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1. So my notes would be 16th note triplets, and I would have a down tap, up tap, down tap, up tap, down tap, up tap, down. One, because I'm outlining the half note triplet, but also on one of them, there's accents on the beginning of the roll where you're going. So you do want to use an accented stroke on the down, but you could certainly come down and go and not really accentuate it and just outline a little bit of that roll by the movement. So that's for the rolls. When you get in a little deeper, this is a good one because this is challenging. This is the one anomaly. In general, I would say, and I have to think through if there's not another example, but there's one roll that doesn't comply with how I would speak out the definition of my rolls. My rolls would be met with, depending on, sometimes a downstroke, but always ending with an up tap down. So there's a closure or an end to the roll. So if I did a 5-stroke roll and I played the traditional one, it would be up tap down, up tap down, up tap down, up tap down. And if I had accents on the and, I could play 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. But if I did have that roll where the 5 strokes are centered on the downbeat of 1 E and 2 E and, that would be down up tap, 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 down. Holding true to my concept of trying to come down on the numbers, or not trying, successfully coming down on the numbers, so that we articulate a feel of coming down on all the numbers so we can really accentuate the element of time. That roll is the only one that doesn't really have an up, tap, down. If I did a 7-stroke roll, I'll lay out the 2 presentations. You could have down, up, tap, down, or tap, tap, up, down. Or I mean, tap, up, tap, down. Tap, up, tap, down would be one kind of a 7-stroke roll, or down, up, tap, down would be another kind. With a 9-stroke, you could have down, tap, up, tap, down. We just discussed that just a moment ago. And you could also have tap, tap, up, tap, down. And why the up, tap, down? Because it adds a sense of closure to the end of the roll. So with the passage of those, if you apply that 5-stroke roll to pages 24 and 25 and 26 and 27 and all the way up through pages, what is that, page 30, I think? No, sorry, page 29. You have some great little etudes. So let me just jump ahead and let me play one that just focuses on that downstroke roll in the 5-stroke setting. So it would be 1 E and 2 E and. I'll do number 9 from page 24, and I'd have 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4 and down up tap 3 and 4 and. And yes, let's just look ahead. If I was playing it faster, I'd probably go. Now my 8th notes would probably be more of a tap stroke. I wouldn't want to get into a large amount of lifting and stuff like that. But a lot of times when you're cruising through things slowly to get everything to move, all these moves have gears, and they build into the facility, the muscle memory, and how you move, what I call an inner logic of movement. So gear changing becomes matter of fact and very well understood on the inside when you're moving. All right, so let me go to the other one, the 1 and a 2 and a. And I'll do number 14 from page 25 in the syncopation. It would be 1, up, tap, down, tap, down, tap, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and down, up, tap, down, tap, down, tap, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Go to... see. Oh, here's a good one. Number 20 on page 26, because now you have the 2 rolls combined, the 1 and a 2 E and. So I would have down, up, tap, down, tap, down, tap. So 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4. And I'm playing down on the numbers. Down, 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 and 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 and 1. Then there's combinations with a full range of 16th notes. For example, number 25, I have 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4 and down tap, up tap, down tap, down tap, down tap. I'm just kind of expediting just to play it through, and on and on. A nice tangled one would be number 35 on page 27. Let's go back to the slower tempo and play 1 and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and 1 and 2 E and 3 E and 4 and 1, up tap, down tap, up tap, down, up tap, down, up tap, down, up tap, down tap, up tap, down, up tap, down. At the same time, when you're involved in something like that, you can really get into this more, space of movement and get into a little more of a deeper focus and breathe. Because as you practice something like that, it's not just practicing just a notation, but it's a cultivating a mentality of practice, a frame of mind that you can work with, that you want to bring into the gig so you're not thinking, so that things are moving. Again, when you practice enough of your form of movement, bring it into the gig and it becomes natural, man, you got a lot of game going on. So let me stop here and just bring Jeff into the conversation for a moment. Jeff, are there any questions or any thoughts that you might add to this? Wow, amazing as always. Thank you, Bruce and Jeff Shirley. Oh, great. Thank you, Cassie. Appreciate that. But Jeffrey, are you there?
There.
Come in,
Sorry, I
Jeff.
don't know why StreamYard changed me up on this. So, for example, I should be able to. You should be able to hear me even though I'm not on screen, but apparently that's not the case for some reason. So
No. I was being ghosted, man. Ghosted.
You're being ghosted.
That's a new term. I know what that means now. Getting ghosted.
All the kids like to talk that phrase. I don't have a lot of questions in chat right now. I got eyeballs, but if anybody has questions, it doesn't have to be specific to the book or anything. If you've got something in particular you want demonstrated or touched on by Bruce, to throw it out there. No harm in asking.
No, not at all. I'm going to jump ahead though, and I'll go to one of my favorite sections of the book that this could be interpreted from either earlier pages in Ted Reed. So the meat of the book has always been centered around, at least from my perspective, and people. Yeah.
One thing, could you just raise your tap pad up just a little bit? We're missing a little bit of the tip of the sticks, I think. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, there you go. So with movement around the toms and stuff like that, in general, you could use pages 34 through 45. That would be the newer printing. If you got an old school printing, it's 33 to 44. And I did all that stuff, moving around the toms and developing a sensibility of flow. But I added a few things that I thought were helpful, and also structuring some movement based around that. So I usually go back to page 56, and I start with a couple of those. Those are set up in eighth note triplets with accents. One, because for somebody who doesn't have the headspace to see the syncopated values as the accent structure to a bunch of triplets, just put the triplets in front of them to make it easier. Why, eventually when they get that going, you could say, you see how that's working? That's that right over there. So on page 56, if I use number 37 or 38, I usually start with those two. I have a few setups that I would do. Let me talk about those setups actually, and let me look at my book where I have those setups starting. Choreographing your moves, section 5, page 38. And I have it set up from the standpoint of working it from two rhythmic outlines. Eighth note triplets, of course, because that's the written version, but also setting up it as a quarter note triplet so that when we start to play from the quarter note triplet outline to the eighth note triplet movement, that you're playing from a half time to a double time. So in other words, if I just played a simple accent on the downstrokes and I played down, up, tap, 3 and leave 4. And I'll just say for right now, these are eighth note triplets, but I could also move those to double time. And instead of making them 16th note triplets, where that's a little challenge, I like the quarter note triplet because I have another gear that I'm going to shift to. And if I was going to 16th note triplets, it's going to be a little off-putting. You can always set tempos, but anyway. So here's a quarter note triplet version of it. I have no way to count that effectively other than bringing it down to thinking of it in groups of 6. So for the identification of any of those eighth note triplet melodies, you'd have to have 2 bars of quarter note triplets, right? So in other words, if my outline is 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1, if I was doing it in quarter note triplets, I'll just speak it out and I would play, 1 ut and 3 up and 1 ut and 3 up and 1. It's kind of hard to do. So what I would just dumb it down to is just counting it in 6 and just know I'm in 4 and playing that 6 over the 4. So it'd be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, get do dot do dot. When I double it up, it would be 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1. So that adds a nice texture of getting this fabric of stretch for a quarter note triplet because you have a lower note value or a larger note value. So you have more context to lift and play through that space to really facilitate the quarter note triplet. So in other words, if I was playing my 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 and lead, 2 and lead, 3 and lead, 4 and lead, 1. Geez, I went from that much movement to way down here. So, and that's the idea, is to get that fabric of stretch so that those lifts and drops are always effectively drawn into your approach. Are the hand movements notated in the book? Haven't gotten my book yet. And not necessarily. They are dictated in small sections. In other words, the little examples that I give, I do talk them through, but there's corroborative evidence with the videos. The book comes with access to 35 videos. And as I said, they're not just demonstrations of the exercise with me just going through it and just playing it. I'm talking and going on about, you know, making sure that we're watching some of the larger framed ideas that you want to tap into. So that's how do you deal with concept 7, keeping triplets while playing 16th notes underneath. Concept 7, Not sure what concept 7 is. Keeping triplets while playing 16th underneath. Well, geez, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. But with 16th notes, I do have a breakdown of adding them into the mix and taking the interpretive version of the accent structures with triplets and then bringing forward an inverted paradiddle, because the inverted paradiddle leaves the first and fourth partial as a single stroke, like it would be in, well, it's going to be in triplets alternating that way anyway. But you'd have with eighth note triplets, you'd have right, left, right. So that would be 1 and and if you had accents on those two partials, well, if you did an inverted paradiddle, 1 and I mean page 25 of your book. Oh, thank you. Very good. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, that's the Alvin. Let me come back to that in just a second so I can kind of finish my thought here, but I will address that. I'll keep it right in front of my face here so I'm ready to jump into that. That's a good one. I have a concept of, in the Alvin Jones book, I mean in the my book, a way of sort of rooting into what I call the Alvin and doing some 16th note patterns in the jazz ride cymbal frame. But with the movement, so if I go to number 35 on page 56 in Ted Reed, which would actually be, in my book, I'm going to jump ahead because I do this exercise where I include the inverted paradiddle. And I'm going to go to page 46 in my book, and it's combining inverted paradiddle and moving with triplets, a deeper dive. So if I do the first one, that's basically just replicating. Well, in that section, I say number 1 from page 34. But originally when I would do it, I would say it was page 56, number 37. So I know a lot of numbers, but I'm just throwing out the references. And you can apply that to those pages 34 through 45, because at the end of the day, that's going to be a lot of math for you to go through. And you're going through the lessons where they go from just one full page of changing from bar to bar from page 38 to 45. Absolutely great to go through. So here is this breakdown, and I'll just share with you how I would break down the triplets. Now, if I'm doing it on the pad, I'm going to isolate a movement because I'm not playing around to the drum. So if I was playing palm down, German approach, I would have this bounce, tap, close, up, up, down, up, tap, 1, 3, 4, bounce, tap, close. See that bounce? Okay, my fingers are automatically drawn open. What was I talking about? The double strokes? Same thing. I want my fingers to be super sensitized to move with that stick. Now, do I have to open them? I could pull up like this, but it doesn't feel like a bounce now. And while I am, interpreting a bounce or taking the energy and redirecting it to my advantage, if I put a rubber ball on the stick tip and threw it down to the pad, that stick tip would bounce. And so I'm just letting my arm go for the conceptual ride of following through of that bounce. I don't want to bounce backwards. I don't want to bounce forward. I want to bounce more of a vertical plane. So if you watch my stick tip, in general, it's going to stay right around here. So when I come back to the pad, look at how my fingers just gently close with the impact of the stick back to the pad. And then I've got my up, up, down, down. Well, those up, ups, down, downs, those are real important to get that comfort of lifting up and trailing. In this case, I'm down, bounce, tap, close, up, up, down, down. My right hand is following my left hand. It's playing the first upstroke. And then I've got my 2 downstrokes. I could also do that in French. Bounce, tap, catch. Now, I would use a different term for the second stroke of the accent because I'm not going to close my fingers down. That would be counterproductive to what I want to get out of French. That would change the tone a little bit. And while I always say you can use those, I'm dead set on developing a sensibility. So if we change it up and move it around and not get clear on one concept, you're missing out on a greater good of what you can do with that. So in the French, bounce, tap, catch, up, up, down, down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down. For the presentation, though, I'm just going to do it in German. I'm going to stay on the pad because you can do these on the pad. I'm not going to play on the kit because we don't have it set up where I can play without distorting. Sorry about that. That's something we're working on to affect next time. But if I go to 34, my book, page 46, and it says page 34, number 1, and I've got the quarter note interpretation, then I have the eighth note interpretation, then I have the inverted paradiddle. I'll play them in 4-bar phrases. That means the quarter note triplet version will be only 2 melodies. So it'll be 1, 4, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. 2 bars of counting it in 6, and then my eighth note triplets. So here's my tempo. Let's see, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Now the eighth note triplets, and 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1. And now the inverted paradiddle with the 1 E, a 2, a 3, 4, 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, 1, and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1 and lead 2 and lead 3. Back to the quarter note triplets. So you see, when I went from that eighth note triplet to the quarter note triplets, a bigger move. And 2 concepts I would throw forward that we're after in terms of relating analogies to dance. We are drummers, we make people dance. But a lot of the phrasing that came out of the early days when snare drummers were playing, tap dancers were doing the same thing. So I always say, get a sensibility of tap dancing to what we do with the ups and downs and all that quality of lift, but also ballet with large moves and a lot of space to get back to the floor. You can really get an effective way of moving and add to what you do and also make it more efficient. It's not about clobbering the drum. It's about getting a nice space value and impacting the drum in a way where it produces a nice, beautiful, fat tone out of the drum. That does not mean you have to hit hard. In fact, if you hit too hard, you choke the drum. So shock the shell doesn't resonate like it does when you get it. So, okay, now let me answer your question about the jazz thing. So Alvin Jones, when you're doing the 16th notes, you could play the ride cymbal as a dotted A 16th. So you go, whoops, my book's going to fall here. You could play. So that's playing Eana, Eana, Eana against the ride cymbal pattern. But you could also stay triplety and go. So my of the triplet comes slightly before the of the 16th notes. If I'm playing on the kit, it just kind of works like that. I'm just kind of dialed into keeping it a triplet with the ride cymbal. But in order to facilitate the concepts at first, it doesn't have to be that way. And I don't know if I really wrote that. I didn't say to do that in the book. I don't remember what I did in terms of video. I might have spoken that out. I'm not sure. It's a while back since I did those videos, so my recollection of those and recall is not super clear. But I would certainly take the time to work that out. Now, that's a cool thing. If I'm playing ding ding, those are more 16th note driven with my ride cymbal, and that tempo would probably be it kind of drives me more towards blending that with the and the other figure that you'd have would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 EN, 2 EN, 3 EN, 4. Oh shit, man! I need my bass drum in there, so I'd have to be going. When you look at my Alvin Jones section in the book, first starting with the triplets, the concept is to take these figures, like for example, 1, 3, 4, and fill in around that. So my bass drum is going to play the melody, and my snare drum is going to fill around that bass drum melody. So that would mean I'd play 1 and lead, 2 and lead, 3 and lead, 4 and lead. That would be my first example. And then as you go down, applying these to page 34 or 35 or 36, 37, those early pages in syncopation, when there are broken up eighth notes, and it would be maybe a space enough to play 3 or 4 triplets in a row, I say, no, 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 always keep it to 2, and then make a choice. And my choice that I express emphatically is to use the back 2 eighth note triplets. So for example, if I played number 8 on page 34, that bass drum melody would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I could play 1 and lead, 2 and 3 and lead, 4 and that would not violate my 2 eighth note triplet rule. But I like that and lead, and lead, and lead, and lead. So knowing that, even though that first beat is blank on beat 1 and the is the bass drum of 1, I could play 1 and lead. Knowing that I'm going to be coming around and I'm going to be using my and lead, 2 and lead, I would play it 1 and lead, 2 and lead, 3 and lead, 4 and lead, 1 and lead, 2 and lead, 3 and lead, 4 and lead. So you'd have the ride cymbal pattern going. You'd be playing. And that would be, again, some of the rules that I put forward. The same thing applied to the 16th notes, except we will have 3 16th notes in a row. And those 3 16th notes are E and and 1 E and. And again, building upon that idea when you have gaps to be able to use that. That's not easy to get that kind of chop going when you're playing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That takes a little time to really get those E-annas really to pull in, and how often do you use them? I'm not going to go blazing around and using that a lot. That's like a little texture, and it could be, built off conversation. If somebody like a guitar player, like when I used to play with my brother for years and years, he'd be doing like a medium blues or a medium jazz tune about this tempo, and he might be going, and then I'm going to answer him and maybe get a little draw of some 16th note in my comping to complement what he's doing or punctuate what he's doing, which is most important. So just trying to be flexible with that. And that Alvin Jones section is really wicked. It's really a cool section. I did do the more traditional ways of doing some of those things, maybe not as some others have done in the past, but I did some breaking up between left hand and right foot. I did some focus on the bass drum as the melody, but maybe keeping an ostinato, as I call it, my jazz B, which are the back 2 eighth note triplets of going 1 and lead, 2 and lead, 3 and lead, 4 and lead, 1 and lead, 2 and lead, 3 and lead, 4 and lead, 1, and playing the bass drum melody. And that puts, a little spin on like, what do you do technically to play that and not overpower the bass drum? So I've got a whole bunch of stuff. And I think in the video, I lay that out. I kind of talk about that. For me, my technical approach for that, and having, again, flexibility in your foot would allow me to bounce on the ball of my foot. So if I needed to get an accent, I could drop to the floor and get a big fat tone, but I can keep the beater ball just enough away from the head and kind of bounce and do some of that, what we would call the constant release exercise. In my world, that was a Freddie Gruber nomenclature for that rolling over the ball of the foot motion, the down, up motion, or some people call it toe heel. It's really technically not on the toe. It's over the ball of the foot, and you're rolling. You're trying to induce your foot into more of a rocking chair kind of a flow. They're not just tipping dramatically and lifting it up. And I've seen a lot of errors in moving like that, and it sounds rough and tumble, And again, technique for technique's sake, I don't know, let's go back to what I was talking about, like guys like Roger Hawkins and Bernard Purdy. They have like, 1/20th of the chops of a lot of guys these days, like super chops are everywhere now. It's like so much information for you to access that to imitate and see somebody do something, is, way more at your disposal. Click a button and you got it. And that's not necessarily serving up the conversation about music and the conversation and the skill set of conversing with people. So always good to be mindful of how you use your chops in your musicianship. And the guys that are working that I know in this town, they're capable of blowing and blowing and blowing, but yet they know how to sit back with a great sensibility. I haven't gotten the book yet. Would you consider waiting for a while and doing something like this again after more people have gotten the book? Go get the book, Gil. I'm going to do this again. Jeff and I talked about doing another one. We just haven't picked a date. So, coming up in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll probably do another one.
Maybe that's a good time to if people want to get the book or if they have a book or similar type of book like we talked about.
Sure.
Maybe that's a good time because we had talked about, and we'll announce that, but maybe that's a good time to start getting that foray. You and I talked about having mini lessons where people come to the stream.
Exactly.
And bring your tap pad and sticks and your question. We'll bring you on stream and you can have a one-to-one with Bruce. And I think that would be very cool to have people ask these same questions, but actually be able to show.
Be live and be, if you want to. I mean,
if some
people are shy. Yeah, some people are gun shy and getting on the camera. But,
True.
For me, I think it's great because stepping up and getting that conversation going is awesome to have true interaction. That's looking forward to receiving the book here in Norway. Question, you touched briefly on reducing the motions when playing double strokes faster. When do they look like when playing faster rudimental solo, or what do they look like? Well, if I was doing okay, so there's my 5 strokes. If I was going and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, inside that there's still an up tap down, but now it's here. Or 7-stroke rolls down, tap up, tap down, tap up, tap down. So point being that one of the things that I'm, trying to induce or put forward, and that some people, it takes a moment to kind of get clarity on that, is when you lift slowly like this and you see how every part of your anatomy can be responsive to the lift and the drop with the stick in your hand, and you start to play faster. If the machine in here has been loosened up effectively, and you understand the dynamic of that movement, and you're tracking and really responsive and synchronized with that movement, and I mean synchronized rhythmically, that stuff shows up easy when you're playing those rudimental solos. So they don't need to be sticky and stiff. I've got stuff all over the floor, so I'm just looking at books here, on my floor. My you can't see my floor, but it's like piles of a few books that I generally go through, and I don't have a Memphis book in front of me that I could pull out and rip off right now and play a solo. But that being said, that would be, I can. Let's see what's on here. Let's do this. Hang on. So this is a little off topic from, what we're talking. I mean, it isn't. It's the extension of, but here's an etude in 6/8 and no sticking. So some of the stickings that I would have come up with are things that I would utilize that were somewhat from Wilcoxon, but other things that I would put forward. So I've got, and yep, sorry you can't see the notation, but here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to stop there just to say, you see how I'm lifting and dropping in there? All that stuff is acquired by going through, understanding how double paradiddles move, how the rolls move. Every sticking can be scrutinized and added with a good clarity of movement. If you have a single paradiddle, yes, you have different ways of doing it, but the general move would be down, up, double, down, up, double, down, up, double, down, up, double, down. Playing that slow, I'll probably come into the hand. But if I want to utilize a more effective way to play it fast, I'm not going to strike down and stop that stick. I'm going to let that stick bounce open and let the impact, bring the stick to a certain height where it falls forward, a little bit of a push from me, but also gravity working for me. And I get that double to come right back into the hand. And I've demonstrated this before, but if I play a single paradiddle slower with a nice bounce on the downstrokes, I have a pivot catch up and pivot catch up. And if I go faster, that's still there. Now, one thing that I'm doing is raising my forearm a bit so that the impact does not get away from me. Conceptually, probably well understood, maybe, but to induce like a regulator in there where it responds effectively takes a moment. It's like, you can see how a great tennis player does a serve, but then you got to go out on the court and like work it out a little bit so that you're consistent and not hitting the ball out of the court. Right. So, I mean, that's just a general move. That's what I do. I'm the coach. I get in there and break everything down so you're moving effectively and make tremendous changes with everybody, not only from the standpoint of movement, but sculpting and reshaping that hand. So the pressure points and the usage of the hand are dramatically changed to increase an effective efficiency on the inside of the hand. So anyway, I hope that sort of demonstrates a little bit of what I would do with that in terms of rudimental escapades. And so as we are drawing just a little bit over the hour here, I would say, if you have any questions or further questions, you can always email me. That's go to my webpage. You could also just, if you want to get a lesson or study with me regularly, I always have probably a space here and there. I'm fairly busy, but you can always check in with me. I've got time zones all over the world, so I'm always mindful of that. And I have what I say, my alternative weeks. I teach every other week. So I have my group of guys on this week, and I have my other group of guys on the other week. The best way to get the book deal is go to hudsonmusic.com and get it from the Hudson people. You can go, if you want to go to Amazon, fine. I think direct to Hudson is a more effective way. And I think you'll get it right off the bat because they have them. And, let's support the actual publisher of it. And the videos are available. I think on the first page or the inside page, there's a code to go to the Hal Leonard Library. And like I said, 35 videos. I didn't do every single exercise. That would have been daunting. But I laid out the larger lay of the land in terms of how I move around the book. And I think each video is, again, more in depth than what you would get in contrast to other videos regarding books and stuff like that. Like I said, I just didn't do a playthrough. I did a mini lesson. As one of my students had said, he goes, man, each video is like a mini lesson. And Ron Bain, if you're listening, that was Ron. I sent a little bit in front of the release of the book to a few students to have a look at it and get some feedback, because I just wanted to see how it was, being processed on the other side. I know my end of the spectrum of what I'm doing, but it's nice to hear feedback from other people. And if you do buy a book, whether it's Amazon or Hudson, please go and give it a review and maybe a sentence or two, so we can, push it forward a little bit. I think it's the greatest companion for Ted Reed. Ted Reed's the greatest book, but it's, as I say, it's in black and white. I'm handing you a big box, the Crayola 64-pack box of crayons to get the nuance of color in that book. So check it out. Go there to Hudson. And thanks for hanging out with me, guys, today. I appreciate everybody showing up. And Jeffrey, always a pleasure to work with you and have you host, as you always do a little bit more. Add a little nice nuance to the flavor of what we do with the graphics.
Well, it's something I haven't streamed in a while, so we're just working out those bugs, but I think we did fine today. And thanks for everybody for coming in and dropping your questions and saying hi. And I think as we get going and like we talk about the mini lessons, of course, Matt will get the book out as things are being released, and we'll get that information up, people where to get the books and the videos that are with it. I think that'll be a cool thing, but I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be fun to have these little roundups. People bring their pads and sticks and jump on once in a while and say hi and pull out your book and ask the question. So
that's right. Absolutely.
All right. Other than that, what's this thing? What's up, Cassie, I believe. Thank you once again. Thank you, everybody. So I guess, Bruce, I will see you soon, and to everybody else, till next time, right? So,
all right, guys. Yeah.
All right.
Everybody, thank you. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.